things first, I'm Jenna Wolf. That is the Hall of Famer, Cris Carter. That is Nick Wright. We've made it to Thursday. Things are good.
And a little respite from the gauntlet that's been the NBA playoffs. No playoff games the next 3 days.
Yeah.
You can reintroduce yourself to your family.
It's you that we're concerned about, Nick.
You can actually say hi to your kids again, make sure they're doing well. It's very exciting.
That's
time.
very funny.
A little 96 hours before we get going again.
Okay, well, but who's counting? There's no games to talk about tomorrow. There was a game to talk about last night. Safe to say the process turned into the process of elimination for the Sixers. Great season, not so great playoff run. The Sixers, after defeating the Heat in 5 games, were sent packing by the Celtics in 5 games as well. 114-112 was your final. Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, both bright, confident stars coming in. Both big question marks going out. Sixers come up short. The process is now in question.
The process, I've said this before, the process is never going to end. Takes a process to get to the playoffs. We did it. It's another one to get to the, I wouldn't say the semifinals, but the conference finals. We didn't do it, so next year, that's definitely our goal.
Putting the process aside for a second and talking about their future aside, let's just talk about what happened in this series. What went wrong for the 76ers, CC?
Well, I think Boston made more adjustments along the series, and Philadelphia, the couple opportunities that they did have, the games that they gave away, because if you look at it from a talent standpoint, roster standpoint, with the Celtics being depleted, you would think that Philadelphia would be a heavy favorite, definitely just based on what they have, what they've done, and, I mean, Boston, we knew offensively they'd be challenged. We didn't know that they would be as good as they would be at home. And I think, to me, the biggest difference is Boston's younger players, their ability to play with confidence at home in a dynamic way that if they go on the road, they only have to win 50% of those games. So they were able to do that, get the split there in Philadelphia. But outstanding series for the Boston Celtics. The adjustment they made, and at the end of the day in the NBA, can you stop people and can you make shots? Boston, the best in the NBA during the regular season, and their younger players in the playoffs, especially this series, 4-1 against the Celtics. I mean, against the 76ers, they made shots.
And I know we're going to focus more on Boston in a little bit, but on the Philadelphia side, it is inexcusable this series is over after 5 games. I know they're young. I know it's a great story. I know that they were one of the best stories in the process. They're over-under for wins this season. They exceeded that by about 10. There's a lot of good stories for the Philadelphia 76ers. But the reality is this series should still be going on. Philadelphia could have won this series 4-1 themselves. There were 2 games that were decisive victories. Game 1 by Boston, Game 4 by Philly. Every other game in this series not only came down to the end, games 2, 3, and 5, but Philadelphia had multiple points in each of those games where they were a better than 9 out of 10 win probability. A 22-point lead in Game 2 after they lose Game 1. Up 4 with a minute left in overtime in Game 3. Last night, up 4 with 90 seconds left in the game. To go 0 for 3 in that spot is disastrous. I said going into this series, CeCe said something I thought was interesting, which is if Boston wins, the process has been delayed. I went as far as to say I cannot see a path to victory for the Celtics that doesn't involve a significant injury to a Philadelphia 76er, most notably Embiid or Simmons. The Sixers were fully healthy in this series, and they got out-executed and out-finished, game in, game out, and that's problematic for them.
Well, I just don't think the problem I have is when you say, well, this is a young Sixers team, and they're just getting used to the spotlight, and they're just getting used to going deep into the playoffs, because without Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward, like, this is a young Celtics team who don't have the experience in the playoffs, who weren't used to going into the postseason, who did win on the road. They had all the same things afflicting them that the Sixers had. So my question to you then, CeCe, becomes how much of what happened to the Sixers falls on those 2 guys, on Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid?
Well, some of it is on them. Because in critical situations, Joel Embiid couldn't get a big bucket in the end. And last night's game, he's got the ball at point-blank range. He can't finish it off. You're supposed to be In that situation, Joel Embiid, you're supposed to be able to get a bucket. They went to him in isolation. They didn't double team him, and he's within 2 feet of the bucket, and he can't get it in. The reason why? It's still a skill thing. He's still a young player. He still doesn't have any left hand. One thing about LeBron, what makes him special, when he's at the rim, not his ability to get to the rim, but at the rim, he can finish with his right or his left hand. Ben Simmons cannot shoot. It's not exaggeration. He cannot shoot outside of 5 feet. So what did Brad Stevens do? He puts bigger guys on him. They lay off of him. And then if he tries to get to the rim, all those shots are contested and very tough shots. So they have major holes in their game, those two players, that they have to be able to fill those holes. And that's what I think will happen this summer. But the reason why I believe the process is still working and didn't really take a big step backwards, even though they have Kyrie coming, is because Markelle Fultz. I believe his athleticism, Philly does not have a point guard. Ben Simmons is not a point guard. I'm willing to debate that conversation with other people. He doesn't have the mindset for a point guard. He can't shoot like a point guard. He doesn't have the temperament as far as taking care of the ball like a point guard. So I believe Fultz, when he comes back, and he is that dynamic athlete at point guard to be able to negate some of the things that Kyrie Irving can do. And also, on the offensive standpoint, Boston don't have anyone that can guard him. So I like a point guard for the 76ers and one other veteran in free agency. I believe the process will be on schedule.
You seem more bullish on Fultz than the Sixers did. The Sixers refused to play him.
They didn't play him.
He got healthy. He got able to play at the end of the regular season. And they felt like we were better off with not only Simmons, but T.J. McConnell, with anyone that they would put in the game.
No, that's right now. We're talking about moving forward.
Sure.
Moving forward. All right, there's a reason why he was the first player in the draft, and he showed signs of that. When you get in a series like this, where his shot is still suspect, no, you give him the whole offseason and next year. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about if he was in this series.
Listen, I'm glad you mentioned that he was the first pick of the draft, because I don't think the process is off the rails. I'm not arguing that. I am arguing this was a disastrous series for them because it should be 3-2. It maybe should be 3-2 Philly. It certainly shouldn't be over 4-1 Boston, given how these games were played. But you mentioned the process. The architect of that process was Sam Hinkie. They fire him at the end of last season. And then the Colangelos come in, and what do? They trade out of the 3 spot with Boston, end up giving up a future draft pick so they can go get Fultz. Boston gets an extra draft pick and gets the guy who was the best player in this series, Jason Tatum. Like, that was you bring up Danny Ainge all the time, Jenna, and I give you a hard time just because I know his childhood crush and it's funny, but
you brought that up just now.
I understand that. But what he did with that trade in particular, that is a franchise.
He got the better player and a pick.
Right. You got a better player and what likely will end up being, it's going to be Sacramento's pick next year. Sacramento's a train wreck. So that is one of the best moves he's made. On your point on Simmons, see, you've been saying all year, listen, the guy can't shoot outside 5 feet. In this series, he took 59 shots. He took 2 shots outside of the lane. And they weren't far outside. They were barely outside. He only took 10 shots outside of 6 feet. He was 2 for 10 on those. So if people don't watch the Sixers, when C's been saying all year long he can't shoot outside 5 feet, it sounds like hyperbole. Not only he can't make shots outside of 5 feet, he refuses to take them outside of 5 feet, which is almost as problematic as just missing one.
The problematic part is, too, when you have a dominant center in Joel Embiid, it clogs the lane, like LeBron. I'll give him an example. LeBron needs shooters around him. He didn't realize that until he started getting into the Miami tenure, where he already had D-Wade, he already had Bosh. They had to convert Bosh to a stretch 5 to open up the court. When you have Ben Simmons, he can't shoot, and you have Joel Embiid, who has the skill set, he can play inside or outside, all it does is it clogs the lane and makes it cumbersome to be able to run the offense.
All right, so the Boston Celtics will now face the Cleveland Cavaliers in the Eastern Conference Finals. We will talk more about this game from the Celtics standpoint coming up. But on the other side, let's talk some football. How much pressure is on Ezekiel Elliott this season? Hear it from Jerry Jones next on First Things First.